In filmmaking, there's a term called picture lock. And what that means is in the post-production process, when you're editing a movie, it's when you literally finish the edit, okay? And, as it implies, it means the picture is locked. So whether it's a short film, a feature film, doesn't matter. The timing of things won't change. And this is important because then, you bring this project, this edit, into color correction, as well as sound design, visual effects, and so forth, right? Now, picture lock is this magical term that a lot of aspiring filmmakers think that, you get to and that's it. And unfortunately, that's just not quite the case. I mean, obviously, eventually you do need to get the picture lock, but, in order to meet deadlines, especially in the Hollywood system and so forth, you're not going to get there. You're going to need sound design happening while an edit might be changing. Same thing with color correction and so forth. And so in this episode, I wanted to highlight to you how I approach, from a sound design perspective, from perspective of how I approach whenever I quote unquote lock something and then would need to change it. Okay. So the way, I do it is, first off, when I deliver my project to somebody, right, you always want to give them the raw files. So if we're looking at this project here, you'll see kind of various things. So the green is dialogue, right? This is a short film sort of project, so not a lot going on, and to be honest with you, it's not complete yet. So I'm using this. Anyway, the point being that the green is dialogue. The sort of orangey color here is my music track. And at the moment, I don't really have a lot. In fact, I have no sound effects whatsoever. But, those could be another separate thing. So I always, first off, have everything organized where music is not on the same track as dialogue or any effects, right? It's always separated out. So that's number one. And what you do, whether it's an OMF or AAF, doesn't really matter. The idea is you're sending these files to the sound designer, okay? And these formats essentially package all of this for them. And sometimes, you could do it where they literally get all the raw files where everything's copied that you utilize. Other times you just need to trim it realistically, and the sound designer will give you the amount of handles, what they call them, that they need. So if it's, 120, that, depending on the number of frames, it's just like 30 frames per second. That's 4 frames extra on the beginning and the end, the head and the tail, as we call it in film editing. And now, mind you, I'm not showing you all these steps of how to exactly do that, because that's not the point of this. The idea is that, you're sending this off to the sound designer, assuming that this is, quote, locked as of right now, right? And let's say you needed to change something, and in my ideal way that I function, right, and, is that at least they kind of do a pass of it, and they send me what they have. And the way a sound designer will send you stuff is what's called stems. So a stem is just, an audio track that has the dialogue, the music, and the sound effects, right? So it's all sort of baked in together. And because, as I mentioned, I only have 2, I can bring those in, and that's my music track. And here's my dialogue track, right? I can already sort of tell. So I'm just going to kind of put the dialogue track above it, okay? So there I have the 2 things. And, I can give it another color, but we won't worry about that too much, okay? So the point of this is that this is one continuous track for each of these things, okay? And so if I had decided to make an edit somewhere, let's say right here, and cutting it all the way here, right? I can get rid of that, and I can move this here. Now, as I'm working, for the most part, I would actually just solo these tracks, because this in theory would be the more mixed version. It would sound cleaner and all that. So, I would kind of work off of that. Now, sometimes the edit could be clean enough where I could, work with the track itself, meaning the stem. Other times, like for this, okay, now this is just one continuous song. Obviously for throughout a movie or a short film, there's more than that, but if in general it was like this, then I might disable this portion of the music, right, in terms of the stem, and have to kind of pull in the music from the original stuff, right? And by doing so, then I can, fix it up, and let's just say it was as easy as a crossfade, which if it was as easy as a crossfade, I could just do that with the stem to begin with. But, I'd have to retime that and so forth, and I'm not gonna, let's just say, that if that song needed to be redone, then it would kind of more look like something like that, right? Where I'm just dragging it out, having to retime it, and I'll have to, do the audio dips and stuff like that. But you get the point. Anyway, I would continue editing in such a fashion, and the reason why this works is because now you have an exact reference of where things are being cut out of, right? So whenever there's a cut here, in terms of the stem, in my new project, then it shows exactly that there's a cut there, right? You know that, and therefore I can translate that with the sound designer of like, hey, move this 10 frames, push this back here, whatever it is. And in fact, one thing that I forgot to omit is that I burn in time code with the video as well, so that that it all corresponds with all of it, right? So the original time code he had, you could see those jumps correspond with this as well, right? So it just ends up being translated back and forth. But the nice part again about this is that I'm able to make the edits. I know where the edits are, and I haven't gotten rid of the original audio, and that's important because, when it goes back, like right now, if in theory all the sound design is good, then we're fine. But as I make more edits, it might require more finessing. Like let's say I just did something like this, and these two tracks needed to be blended much better. Then the idea is when I send this back to my sound designer, he still has the original stuff there, all aligned, right? And that way he can pull the stuff that he needs and make the cleaner sound design elements to make it work versus, having just what's there. So that way, it just ultimately ends up being cleaner. Where the edits are and stuff like that. And you'd be surprised because I've been in situations where someone's done a sound mix, then they've reopened the edit, but because of the way they structured it, essentially the sound designer had to remix the movie from start to finish, and because it wasn't tracked properly. And so the point of this is that if you have stuff that already works, why have to redo it, right? When you can just track the stuff that still needs to be changed versus the stuff that's already good. So that's the purpose of this. It's a little bit convoluted. It's a little bit in the weeds. It's a little bit specific. But, when you can really work with it, it does prevent a lot of headaches. So I hope this does help. And in fact, if you're kind of in a situation like this, I encourage you to ask questions if you have them, because a lot of this stuff ends up being case specific. Again, this is kind of my methodology of how I operate, but it does differ, and there are other ways to kind of track this. But the idea is you want to be able to have at least a methodology of what the hell changed from one edit to the next, so you can speak to the various departments in such a way. So that's the long and short of it. So thank you for taking the time to tune in. See you next time.